Jimmy and JoAnne, we're here with another episode, a preview episode of our upcoming show tonight, Unseen Libya. There's a lot of things happening all around the world, particularly in the Middle East. How are the two of you doing tonight?
We're doing
okay.
Good to see you. Very good to see you. We are dealing with some new technology. I think people who were tuned in to Sunday with Charles yesterday are aware that we're now broadcasting in full HD, 50% higher resolution than previously, and 2 times the bit rate. I've also got a new sound processing system that should make us sound even better, but it's a struggle to deal with at times. What are we going to be talking about tonight when we transition over to our sponsor-exclusive show?
Well, I'm going to try to help everybody understand that, in all international activities, I think the best thing that anybody can do is follow the money. And I'm going to give everybody a primer of what the international bankers use to really determine what shape an economy is in a country or internationally. And I'm going to have references that everybody can go to, and please be sure and go to all these references. Look at those sites, try to understand what they define, and then I think it'll help everybody be able to weed through the truth and the lies that we're being told by all different governments about what shape our economy is and what's really happening, and look at it from a financial standpoint. Mm-hmm. And the ramifications of that is, of course, the big guys, when they run out of money, they start trying to figure out which new pocket they can pick. And of course, an oil-rich or asset-rich country that doesn't have a very big population is always a target. And I think that all of our governments have been guilty of doing that for sure since World War II. So I'm going to cover that. And then JoAnne has a huge amount of information on Libya.
Yeah, Libya is in the process of taking back their sovereignty from terrorist groups, from foreign puppet governments, from all kinds of different occupiers of their country since 2011. And they have a Libyan national army that has been in Tripoli trying to clean out these terrorist militias since April of 2019. The thing about Libya is the people are very tight together now. All the tribes are together because they understand now the dirty game that was played with them in 2011, and that these puppet governments, especially the Sarraj government, the GNA, AOS, whatever they want to call it, was appointed by the UN and
without any authority.
Yeah, actually in Tunisia, and then snuck into Libya by the dark of night. And as soon as their boots were on the ground, they were declared the illegitimate government in Libya, which no legitimacy. They hadn't been elected. And their Muslim Brotherhood, all they continue to do is steal and rob from the country. They've never been a legitimate government. But they are held in place by terrorist mercenaries, militias, like what's in Syria, like ISIS, like al-Nusra, like al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call them, whatever name you want to call them. They're proxy armies for Turkey especially. Turkey is the one who's been funding that puppet government and putting...
He's been funneling, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
He's been funneling the money that he receives from the Federal Reserve, from European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, that money that they gather together to fund these terrorist activities, funneled through Qatar and then Turkey and then back into Libya, Syria, and other places.
Plus, he's using Libyan money, stolen Libyan money to fund these terrorists. Turkey sends them arms under the table, the Libyans call it, but that means they sneak them in. They bring ships in that they say are loaded with commercial cargo, but they aren't. They're loaded with military weapons and tanks and all kinds of things. There are drones there Turkey sent in. There are drones from Qatar. That's the other country that's funding these militias. So the Libyan people finally had enough. The UN has an embargo against the Libyan National Army of ever getting weapons. However, they don't have any problem with the weapons going to these terrorists. So for some reason, they have decided that the Libyan people could put together an army. And they let Khalifa Haftar lead it. Khalifa Haftar is a CIA agent, has been for 40 years, was dropped into Libya to lead the revolution, the phony revolution, and then decided he was going to change sides, which nobody really believes. But he is the leader of the army. He was allowed to do that by the West. That's why the Libyans joined together behind this army. This army is made up of all the tribes of Libya now, 100%. This is unusual in Libya. They don't always get together like that and join behind one thing, but they're all behind this army. It is the People's Army, and what you're going to see now is the GNA, the phony Sarraj government, is losing. They've lost 90% now of everything they had, maybe 95%. The army is close to taking Tripoli. It's 2.5 miles from Green Square. It's on its way to Misrata to clean out the Snake's Head, which is where Hillary Clinton's militias were and continue to this day. And when they finish that, their country will be free. So Sarraj, the head of this puppet government, panicked, and he went to Erdogan. First, he signed some illegal agreements with Erdogan and encouraged Erdogan to bring in the Turkish army to save himself. Well, when that happened, Egypt stood up, Russia stood up. Everybody got excited about they don't want the Ottoman Empire, they say, back in North Africa, which is what Erdogan said he was going to do. He was going to put a military governor.
He was going to put his invasionary forces into Libya, take it over, and establish a military government in Libya.
Yeah.
He was going to restart the Ottoman Empire.
When that happened, the Libyan National Army put it in burner, if you will, or stepped on the gas and began to clean out everything. And so the militias started losing. They started running away. And this guy, who has now nothing to offer anybody, thinks he can be at a bargaining table. He's not even a legitimate person in Libya as far as a leader goes. The UN mandate ran out 2.5 years ago. He should have left a long time ago.
But he's been given, the only authorization he's ever gotten has been a phony authorization from the UN. So he's been protected by this phony UN authorization forever. But if you'll picture the Libyan People's Army, the Libyan National Army is at the 2-yard line, and they have the bit in their teeth, and they're absolutely going to drag this victory home. And God bless them. They're fighting so hard. They're really doing a wonderful job of finally cleaning out their country.
We have on-the-ground updates from the tribes, from other people outside of Libya, inside of Libya. We have a lot of information to give everybody. We'd like to get the truth out. The Libyan people are excited about this. There's other things about Dr. Saif al-Islam we'd like to talk about. So it'll be a great show.
And JoAnne has, I think, probably, it sounds like one of the Libyan generals' wives or sisters started contacting JoAnne the last couple of days, and she gets minute by minute intel on what's really going on in Libya. So
I got it from the tribes too.
Yeah,
that's
amazing. Other sources,
actually
deep now, inside the military.
For people who maybe are tuning in for the first time, it's important that everybody knows that you can learn all about Jimmy and JoAnne by going to their website, LibyanWarTheTruth.com. You can order their DVD. And of course, becoming a sponsor on Subscribestar or Patreon is the best way. Well, for Jimmy and JoAnne, you're going to want to go to patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty. And people who sponsor Jimmy and JoAnne on Patreon are going to get $5 off. It's free shipping on the DVD. It's a $15 disc. And if you're a sponsor of theirs on Patreon, the shipping will be free. And of course, our weekly show, Unseen Libya with Jimmy and JoAnne Moriarty, is only available on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to thank Curious Courier for utilizing Super Chat on Crowdsource the Truth too. And we've got a question coming from Patricia Stone. She asks, how do they steal Libya's money? It's a good question.
Well, because according to the Treaty of 2006, Libya was required to take all their money, which had previously not been deposited in any central bank, and they required them to take that $500 billion and put half of it at least in the Federal Reserve System, which they put 241 billion in the Federal Reserve. They put 150 billion euros in the European Central Bank, and the balance of it went into the Japanese Bank of Japan. And those three entities are Zionist-owned central banks. They're private. They're Khazarian mafia. They're privately owned enterprises. They don't have anything to do with the United States or Europe or anybody. They're privately owned banking entities, and they, of course, control the money that are in their accounts. And so, the first week of the phony Libyan revolution, first time in the history, invaders go into Libya, and immediately, within the first 7 days of that invasion, the Federal Reserve and European Central Bank take those bank accounts, which belong to the Libyan people, and transfer title of those to the rebels that were invading the country, not even Libyans. So that's how they stole the money. And then, of course, they put this phony government in Tripoli, and they've given him the signatory authority on a new central bank account where all the revenue from oil and gas flows, and not one dime of that money has ever flowed to the Libyan people. It flows to the Muslim Brotherhood. It flows to all these rebels and all these terrorists that have gone into Libya and have been allowed to occupy it by the U.S., UN, and NATO. So they've raped the country. They've done $1 trillion worth of damage to the country. They stole $500 billion and probably another $500 billion since then from the sale of oil and gas. And France has taken a huge amount of gold out of Libya. It's a mess.
For people who don't know, Jason, I just like to say we were in Libya since January 2007, off and on, doing our oil and gas business over there. And we went back into Libya in 2011 on a fact-finding commission in May of 2011, and we were there until September. We were captured by Al Qaeda. We were sentenced to death. It's quite an amazing story, really. It's better than a movie. But we were saved by 3 miracles, or maybe more than 3 miracles. And it's a story, but we became very close with the Libyan tribes during that time. We are witnesses to the war crimes that were committed by NATO and the UN and US and UK and all of them. Huge amount of war crimes. We saw the troops that were on the ground there. We saw it goes on and on. That's why it's so important to us to get the truth out, because.
And our intelligence is raw. It belongs to us. It's not secondhand. We were there. We saw it with our own eyes.
We became the official spokesperson for the tribes of Libya because they had no voice. The people speaking for Libya to this day, whether it be Khalifa Haftar or Sarraj or even Aguila Saleh of the Tobruk government, none of them speak for the Libyan people. Only the Libyan National Army now.
In fact, there are Libyan officials that say JoAnne and I have a better understanding of what's going on in Libya than anybody else in Libya.
Wow. Yeah, well, I mean, it's become clear to me over the many months. Is it more than a year now that we've been doing the show? It's hard.
Yes, sir.
Hard for me to keep track, but over the more than 1 year that we've been doing this show, I've certainly been gaining an education in all of these things, and it's complicated for sure. Khalifa Haftar and Belhaj and Sarraj. But for people who really want to understand what's going on in the Middle East, this is very important, and people can learn all about the story of Jimmy and JoAnne escaping Al Qaeda if they purchase the DVD Escape from Al Qaeda from LibyanWarTheTruth.com. Patricia tells us that she did buy the CD and that it's powerful stuff. We've got a message coming in from Periscope. Concierge is saying, now you know why Donald Trump is trying to bankrupt the central banks. I feel like Jimmy's about to explode for me saying that, but what do you think of that, Jimmy?
Well, I'm real hard on Trump because we convinced the tribes to endorse him. That's the first time they've ever endorsed any political person worldwide. We've been very, very disappointed in Trump's international activities. And unfortunately, he has been controlled by everybody but good sense. And he reinstalled all the Obama criminals. Every appointment he's ever made, I'm sure, has been forced into his hands. He's never gotten any qualified people in any position. And so he gets misinformation. And of course, I hold him accountable because he's smarter than what he's doing. But the bankruptcy of the United States, Inc. is not being done by Trump. It's being done from internally. And they have overprinted money to extents that you can't believe. But, he's a businessman. He's trying to figure out some way to bail out this mess of, the United States has 1,000 bases worldwide. That takes a huge amount of money to maintain those. So he's out trying to get the countries to pay for the invasionary forces in their country, and they're telling him, no, we're not going to take your army out. And so he's between a rock and a hard place, and they finally, he's a rebel, and so he's been pushing all the hot buttons that he could. and of course having a extraordinary sized ego. That they worked on that, and I think they finally put him into a box when he assassinated this general. I think they put him into a position where he is now in a real box over that. And of course, the bad guys right behind him are going to be more than happy to step in because they're all deep staters. And God bless him. He's got terrible intel. Has forever. So he never stood.
Concierge is telling us that Trump did all of that on purpose so he could expose this method. I mean, there's something to that. Perhaps he's helping the American people understand. And Rod is also telling us he's got the CD. So there's a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of mixed information about what went on with this Soleimani, the killing of Soleimani, that he was a military target. You guys told us that he was fighting ISIS. We've heard ISIS has come out and said that they love it that they killed him, which obviously we don't really want ISIS to be happy. But then now today we're seeing protests in Iran that seem favorable towards the United States. Is that real? Is that fake?
Not true.
Well, Jason, I saw an Iranian person post something today, and they said, 7 million Iranians came out to mourn the death of Soleimani. 200 people come out to protest the government. That's the only one Trump picks up.
Got it. It's hard.
Here's something. Trump is a businessman. The market at 25,000, 26,000. The real market is at about 6,000 maybe. So all that difference is fluff, and he's got to know that. You can't,
for sure, he knows.
You can't look at it and continue to propagate that lie that keeps the poor people in these markets when the Federal Reserve has admitted that they pump trillions into Wall Street to keep the treasuries and bonds and everything have a purchaser, have an appearance of a purchaser. So we've got a real false economy that is being propagated as really a great deal. But I'll cover that in the long show.
Right. Well, we're going to head over there now. We've got just about 10 minutes until we begin, and that's going to be for our sponsors, the exclusive show that's going to be starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 in Texas. That's on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. I want to thank all of the sponsors who have made this show possible for over a year. Curious Courier is asking Jimmy and JoAnne, how are you guys doing? Have you found a stable place to live? Have you finally been left alone, or are certain agents still checking on you? And how are you maintaining? I think I know the answer.
They're still hammers. We've got a little house that's got a dry roof, and that's about all we can say for that. We, of course, are totally financially strapped all the time. JoAnne has needed a massive amount of dental work done since they attempted to kill her a couple of years ago and broke 2 teeth.
Broke my teeth up here, and then
she's had no biting surface for almost 3 years.
It ruined my jaw, and it's not aligned anymore. So
we can't afford to do anything about that. That breaks my heart, But I mean, we put one foot after the other, and what we're doing is very important. And as long as we've got all the bad guys attacking us, we know we're over the target. So we're continuing to do what we do because we have support from all our good folks. We have a lot of people that pray for us. We're doing what we're supposed to do.
Libya is in our heart. We were there when the good people of Libya tried to stand up against this NATO mess and were slaughtered. And we want them to have their country back.
And I hope that people will appreciate that even though some of the things that we were discussing last week might not have been in alignment with some of the staunchly pro-Trump viewers of Crowdsource the Truth, Jimmy and JoAnne do not let their desire for increased sponsorship control the stories that they bring us. They're telling us the truth, even if it's unpopular. And I saw a few comments from people who said that they didn't appreciate that, you guys weren't necessarily in agreement with President Trump, but I appreciate the two of you for expressing your true feelings and true opinions based on the facts as you see them, not based on what's going to get you the most sponsors. And I hope that sponsors, even people who disagree with you, will appreciate that as well, because the truth is not always what you want it to be. And when I've had sponsors try and tell me, ooh, I didn't like that story, I want my money back, I just tell them that's not the way that it works. You got to go to CNN if you want to pay for news that you like.
Jason,
That's right.
please, we want everybody to remember that more than a month ago, an official of Iraq called us and told us they were fixing to throw the U.S. Army out for cause.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you've been talking about that have filled in the blanks and over time proven to be correct. So I hope that people will join us in just under 10 minutes when we transition over to the sponsor exclusive show on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. The truth is free, but putting together all this equipment and keeping ourselves fed and housed each week to create a show about it is not. So I hope that people who want to hear the truth but aren't willing to go to Libya themselves or assemble all this stuff will appreciate the hard work that Jimmy and JoAnne and all the other guests and co-hosts that I have on Crowdsource the Truth put into these stories and put into these broadcasts, and join us on the sponsor exclusive portion. We'll be there in just about 5 minutes. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you there.
Thank you.